I wanted to show you guys how unorganized this reel in of the tariff regime was. It's one thing to have your press secretary the day before say you're not going to reverse and it's fake news and how dare the media allege it. That's silly. But it's another thing to have Trump trade representatives, the people who are supposed to represent the United States on trade, learning from social media that the tariffs have been removed in the middle of a Senate hearing. Check this out.
Mr. Trade Representative, are you aware that the tariffs have been paused?
I am, yes.
When were you made aware of that?
Well, I understood the decision was made a few minutes ago. It's
Sitting here
under discussion.
Sitting here under discussion. So did you know that that this was under discussion, and why did you not include that as part of your opening remarks?
So typically what I don't do is divulge the contents of my discussions with
What are the
President
details of the pause?
Well, my understanding is that because so many countries have decided not to retaliate, we're going to have about 90 days.
No, excuse me? We are, China.
And by the way, again, Ukraine didn't retaliate. Their tariffs have not been lowered at all. Their tariff stays at 10%. It was just all the countries that had bogus, crazy 40% or 35% tariffs rates that are just based on their trade deficit, nothing to do with unfair trade practices. Or even if there are some, it certainly doesn't lead to the 90% tariff rate that they're alleging on Vietnam and other countries we wanted to replace China as a major exporter to the United States. And we tried to make relationship with them to achieve that goal. There's still countries like Ukraine and others who started at 10%, and now that everybody's been moved to 10%, their tariffs hasn't been moved at all. They're still in the same hole they were before.
China increased their tariffs on the United States. Trump blinked.
What's the blink, sir?
What do you know about this pause? What are the details of it?
Well, the details, as I understand it, is that China continues to retaliate.
By the way, what do we have achieved? It's like, oh, because they didn't retaliate. So is that the achievement, that the Europeans didn't retaliate to the thing we didn't need to do? What concession have we gotten? Because the concessions that I saw the Vietnamese give of 0 for 0 complete free trade, getting rid of their 1.1% actual tariff in comparison to the 90% tariff that the Trump administration was saying they have, like they said, no, that's not good enough. We need to get rid of the non-tariff related trade barriers, which basically equaled, you need to trade equally with the United States as we trade with you, which is physically impossible for many of these countries.
Other countries didn't retaliate. The president 2 or 3 days ago said we wanted to negotiate with those countries that asked for meetings. That's what we're doing.
What are the details? How long is the pause? How many days? How many weeks?
I understand it's 90 days. I haven't spoken to the president since I've been in this
So the trade
hearing.
representative hasn't spoken to the president of the United States about a global reordering of trade.
Yes, I have. I've just been in the hearing with you, sir.
But yet he announced it on a tweet. WTF? Who's in charge?
Okay. Either say it or don't say it. Okay? Either say it and be the guy who said the F word in the Senate hearing, or congressional hearing. They said a Senate hearing earlier. Or don't say it. Don't. Congressman, I say lol. Sir, Lamau, in fact. No, I don't need this in Congress. We don't need this in Congress.
You, sir.
But yet he announced it on a tweet. WTF? Who's in charge?
Truth, technically.
The president of the United States is in charge.
And what do you know about those details?
Well, as I mentioned,
it looks like your boss just pulled the rug out from under you and paused the tariffs, the taxes on the American people. There's no strategy. You just found out 3 seconds ago, sitting here, we saw you.
We've been discussing.
There were actually pictures that were, I wonder if I can find it, of the moment when they found out that the tariffs in the congressional hearing, that they were being reversed, and they had to like take a moment to like take a break and sit down and like, okay, let's figure out what our new policy is. Let's figure out what the new thing we're saying our position is. Let me see if I can find this picture, because Democrat accounts were like retweeting it like crazy. Crazy. Where is it? Here it is. This is from actually the representative that's speaking on screen right now, Steve Horsford, I believe. Horsford. What it looks like when you're the country's trade representative testifying before Congress and you find out Trump changed his mind on tariffs. This is reckless governing. There is no strategy, and it's obvious this is amateur hour.
If you came here knowing that you were going to be turned off, that these tariffs were going to be turned off, why didn't you include that in your opening statement? Why didn't you reference that as part of your testimony?
Well, I don't disclose my conversations with the president, sir.
These were specific questions we asked you all along. What's the strategy? These are real consequences for the American people and small businesses. I had a group of small businesses in my office earlier today talking about the impacts of these tariffs on aluminum and steel. This is amateur hour, and it needs to stop. What does this even mean for your negotiating strategy? How are you in charge of negotiation if the president is tweeting about this from wherever the hell he is?
The president was elected, and he runs the trade policy, and I advise him and execute his trade policy.
Who executes the trade policy?
I execute the trade policy.
Did you know that this was happening?
We have been discussing all kinds of.
And there's another member of the.
Though he didn't know it was going to happen, he knew that it was a possibility. As the White House press secretary said, they were not considering it as a possibility. He knew it was a possibility. But I mean, even if he knew it was a possibility, that still indicates that he didn't know before it was announced. Because knowing it's like, if I knew that we could go forward with a merger, that's different than being told we're going to do a merger. What you present to other people, how you talk about the future of your company, all these things change.
The cabinet, Bessent, who just canceled coming to the Hill to avoid talking about the market because it's in turmoil. This in just days, because there was no strategy, there was no plan. The president chose to take actions that he didn't even have the authority to take. He's put our economy in disarray and near collapse. We have small businesses and Americans who are concerned about their well-being, people's retirement. People's 529 accounts went down because of this administration. We have people that are planning to send their kids to college this fall. People who are retiring whose benefits have declined. Is this market manipulation?
No.
Why not? If it was a plan, if it was always the plan, how is this not market manipulation?
It's not market manipulation, sir.
Well, then what is it? Because it sure is not a strategy.
We're trying to reset the global trade system. That's offshore all of our factories.
Okay, how many times? Okay, if you need to reset a computer, right? You know, you click the reset button, and then you reset it. You don't click reset. It starts resetting. You say, well, never mind. And then you cancel it. And you say, wait, stop. And then you hit reset again in 9 months. And then you're like, that's making it painful. It's like you're ripping off a Band-Aid. You say, I gotta go pee. And then you put the Band-Aid back on. You start to rip it off again. No, I gotta go clean my car. Put the Band-Aid back on.
Is that done? How have you achieved any of that? But to enact enormous harm on the American people, which was our concern from the very beginning. Tariffs are a tool. It can be used in the appropriate way to protect U.S. jobs and small businesses. But that's not what this does. So if it's not market manipulation, what is it? Who's benefiting? What billionaire just got richer? And all the while, there are not even any Republicans left in this hearing. They all left because they don't even want to defend this. But meanwhile, the speaker is rushing to the floor to pass a budget reconciliation to screw America by passing the biggest tax cut in history on the backs of the American people. WTF!
He's got to stop it. Like he says, like, he makes like a good point, and I at the end of it hearing like SMH. Stop, please.
Who's in charge? because it sure
Goofies are upset. Like, I don't want Congress people to talk like this.
doesn't look like it's the trade representative. You just got the rug pulled out from under you. I wish.
Yeah, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I just don't like internet abbreviations being used in real life speak, period. But to do it in Congress so that the person who actually has to sit there and enter every little word into the record has to write that out, I find that offensive. OMG, Senator, what the fuck? LMFAO. I don't know.
The rug pulled out from under you. I wish I could feel some empathy, but the empathy I have is for the American people whose very well-being and livelihoods are being affected. This is not a game. This is real life. I yield back.
Let the record reflect that there's more Republicans in this chamber than there are Democrats currently in this committee room. There's 6 of us, there's 5 of you. So let's make sure we get the facts right. I appreciate the president did not blink on China, as was said earlier, and it needs to be corrected in the record. In fact, he increased China by 125%.
Would you yield?
Okay. So then the new standard would be, I don't care who's in the room. Okay. The new standard would be he blinked to 64 out of the 65 countries. So he blinked on Vietnam. He blinked on Japan. He blinked like what? But he didn't blink on. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
I do not.
yield? Can we have a colloquy?
No.
We don't want to talk about the trade policy here in the trade committee. That this is our jurisdiction.
Your time has expired, and I'm more than happy to talk to you.
I asked if you would yield.
And I said no.
Because you don't want to defend the policy or the strategy. Kick me out. What you gonna do? Kick me out of this.
Mr. Yakum.
Kick me out. What you gonna do? I haven't seen that approach yet. My goodness. Who is I've never heard this guy before.
The strategy. Kick me out. What you gonna do? Kick me out of this.
Mr. Yakum, you're recognized.
Kick me out. Kick me out. I did want to show, there was one other clip actually from this piece of information that I thought was fascinating. This accidental damage to Trump's buddy, to the Kremlin, as the crude oil price has gone down to around $50, undercutting one of the main ways that they finance the war. I saw there was this segment where Stephanopoulos went back and forth with Hassett, one of Trump's economic aides, who also advised Romney, McCain, and I believe Bush as well. He asked him about, why do we have these tariffs placed on Ukraine? But why don't we have any tariffs placed on Russia? Why are they not facing any tariffs? And we got 2 different answers to this question. We got one answer that came from Hassett, and then we got another answer that came from Trump himself during his press conference with Netanyahu today. I wanted to look at both.
Why did the president not include Russia on the list of countries who are facing tariffs?
There's obviously an ongoing negotiation with Russia and Ukraine, and I think the president made the decision not to conflate the 2 issues. It doesn't mean that Russia, the fullest of time, is going to be treated wildly different than every other country.
But Russia is one of the only countries, one of the few countries that is not subject to these new tariffs, aren't they?
They're in the middle of a negotiation, George, aren't they?
Well, I'm asking a different question. Why? And I just want to know why.
Would you literally advise that you go in and put a whole bunch of new things on the table in the middle of a negotiation that affects so many American and Ukrainian and Russian lives?
Negotiators do that. Negotiators do that all the time.
All the time.
No. That's not appropriate to throw a new thing into these negotiations right in the middle of it. It's just not.
So you are conceding that Russia is not paying any new tariffs, unlike many of our allies, including Europe, Canada, Mexico.
Russia is in the midst of negotiations over peace that affects really thousands and thousands of lives of people, and that's what President Trump's focused on.
So his response as to why we're tariffing Ukraine, but we're not tariffing Russia, is because we're engaged with negotiations right now with the Russians. So we need to that still doesn't, by the way, that doesn't answer my question, which has to do with why are we tariffing Ukraine? If it has to do with negotiations, okay, don't piss off the Ukrainians as well. Stop tariffing them. But no, they get tariffed. We need to do this in order to please the Russians, to make them happy, we need to say that we're choosing America first to all these other countries, but not to the Russians. We don't choose America first when it comes to the Russians. They don't get trade barriers. They can have access to our economy. They can help us deindustrialize. They can do that if they want. That's fine. Is that okay? Why are we not applying this equally? Why are we not applying this equally? This idea that if we were to add tariffs, this would undermine the peace process. Bull crap. I don't buy it. You don't think that the Russians would understand after we placed tariffs on over 60 countries, many of them top U.S. allies, that it had nothing to do with the peace talks. It has to do with the general positioning of our economic posture. The idea that they would think of it as some threat or undermining of their security, and therefore peace would finally fail. You want to know why peace is failing? Peace is failing because the Russians restate their position multiple times over, and Trump just concedes more. Peace is failing because they'll agree to things with the Russians behind closed doors. The Russians will come out, violate what they agreed to, not commit to the other things they agreed to. So say they didn't commit to one thing, and the things that they do publicly commit to, violate anyway, and then nothing changes. Pressure is added on the Ukrainians. Pressure is taken off of the Russians. We are no closer to peace. Negotiations still haven't started. And the thing that's going to do it it isn't the bombing in Kyiv that killed all those children. It's not those strikes in all those other cities or an energy infrastructure or the failures of the ceasefire, the execution of the POWs, or Putin's non-starters and rejections of unconditional ceasefires. It's integrating Russia into our tariff regime. That'll be the kill. That'll end it. We can't add any pressure to Russia, not even things that could be misinterpreted as pressure if you have a single brain cell. The Russians wouldn't misinterpret it as pressure, but this is an excuse to say that they would. And I love Stephanopoulos' reaction. Like, this has happened before. Tariffs have been introduced during negotiations. No. Oh, okay. Well, then we can't add any more sanctions to Iran then, and we can't add any more pressure to Iran while we're negotiating. Okay, Israel and Hamas have to stop fighting in order to No, there's pressure during negotiations that are added, that are removed, and this is not even related to the negotiation. It's just an attempt to make the Russians feel more comfortable. It's such a terrible excuse. And you want to know the funny thing is, Trump doesn't even buy this excuse. Listen to how Trump explained it. Trump just said, this excuse sucks, I guess. I'm just going to lie. Listen to him during his conference today with Netanyahu.
Can you talk a little bit about your potential meeting with Vladimir Putin? Do you still plan to meet with him? Could that happen in Saudi Arabia? And maybe you could elaborate as well a little bit on not providing tariffs on Russia, sir.
So the reason we're not talking about tariffs with Russia is because we're not doing business essentially with Russia because they're in a war. And I'm not happy about what's going on with the bombing, because they're bombing like crazy right now. They're bombing. I don't know what's happening there. That's not a good situation. So we're meeting with Russia. We're meeting with Ukraine. And we're getting sort of close. But I'm not happy with all the bombing that's going on the last week or so. Horrible. It's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing.
So the two things he comments on is, hey, why no tariffs on Russia? And his advisor had said the reason why Trump had not placed tariffs on Russia was to save negotiations, that peace negotiations could be foiled by integrating Russia into the same tariff regime we're trying to integrate everybody else into. That, we're not giving, we got to give them special treatment. Now, Trump says that the reason we didn't integrate them into the tariff regime is because we don't trade with them, which is not true. We trade $3.1 billion worth of Russians. Yeah, all in here, just all in Russian capital. No, worth of goods with the Russians in 2024, 3.1 billion. I think it was about 800 million of it was in like rare jewels and gems and such. So we obviously do trade with them. Now, 3.1 billion is not as much as other countries, but it's still $3.1 billion. So we do trade with them. We just don't trade with them as significantly as we trade with, say, Vietnam. But then the slide over into the second section is what really angered me, because that first half is wrong, but like whatever. You know, I'm kind of used to it. It's the, oh, I saw there was a lot of bombing. It was bad. There was a lot of bombing in the last week. That's bad. I don't really know what's going on. You know, so we gotta end the war, et cetera, end the war. So he doesn't say any locations. He doesn't say any names. He doesn't say any culprits. He doesn't point a finger in which direction. He doesn't say who did it. He didn't say what happened. He doesn't say anything. But what he's probably speaking about has to do with a strike that occurred in Kiev, which is in, you know, kind of more western central Ukraine, which killed 18 people, including 9 children, after a Russian missile struck some residential homes and a playground. This was a very tragic strike, killing all these children and all these families as they were going out to try to spend some time with their loved ones. It has, of course, been met with absolute vitriol inside of Ukraine and disgust at this attack. This ceasefire that Trump announced for civilian infrastructure, that he said, you know, the White House said that they had negotiated with the Russians. This is what they see of it. This is what the Ukrainian people see of the American negotiated civilian ceasefire, that the Russians won't even say that they're not even striking civilian infrastructure. They just said energy. Even though Trump said he got that, you know, they said they were able to get them to agree to not strike civilian infrastructure, and here is civilian infrastructure getting struck. Now, the Russians, they came out and said, hey, you know, this actually was a strike that killed 85 soldiers and destroyed 20 military vehicles. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. With a cluster munition strike. In Kiev, I mean, that's a lot of soldiers to get dead. It must have hit a barracks or something. But we haven't seen any evidence provided of that. But we have seen video footage of civilian stores and areas being bombed by the Russian missile.
The sort. Here is the same moment from 3 different angles. The 2 women sitting out, nothing of the.
That's what is being talked about. It's what the UN is talking about, with the UN human rights chief probing the attack and talking about this murder of these 9 children, calling for an investigation into it, calling it an unimaginable horror. As more and more people, you know, try to raise awareness of what happened here, it's impossible to ignore it as somebody trying to facilitate the negotiations, even not as somebody backing up Ukraine, which Trump has solidly given up a decent amount of that. But even as somebody trying to facilitate these negotiations, how do you push them forward if your civilian ceasefires are broken up by cluster munition strikes, tearing up children on playgrounds? What's more of a civilian infrastructure item that you could imagine in your head than a children's playground? But let me tell you, it isn't the first time I've seen children's playgrounds hit by shrapnel and bombs. I remember being in Kharkiv, documenting it as well. This isn't the first time, and I hope it's the last, but sad to say that there's a decent chance it won't be. And as long as Russia is retrofitting S-300s and S-400 anti-aircraft missiles to be launched at cities, which are incredibly inaccurate, even if they were trying to be careful for civilians, they're going to end up killing a lot of them. I remember going to the ruins in a lot of Ukrainian cities for these strikes, going to the homes where fathers and sons and daughters and wives and have been killed by these S-300 strikes. And they continue to fire them into Ukrainian cities because they need to find missiles somewhere. So my question is, how do, and this is a footage taken right before the strike by one of the mothers of one of the killed children. How do you see this, see the Russians commit the one thing, then violate it immediately afterwards? See the Russians unwilling to concede on anything, while there has been concession after concession on NATO, on this, on that, given to them over and over and over again. To see them reject just outright an unconditional ceasefire, then blow up all these kids, and then say, well, we should trust in Putin. We should trust in it. As they announced the largest draft in Russia in 14 years, we should just trust that they aren't expanding for a larger war, as they are clearly doing so. At what point do you expect the Ukrainians to swallow these negotiations set to almost seemingly punish them for resisting, punish them for standing up for themselves? At a certain point, you have to say the pressure needs to be borne on Russia, not on the Ukrainians, who are having their children blown up in these strikes, violating the ceasefires that Trump and his administration said that they got them to agree to. Is this what Trump's ceasefire looks like? Child-sized coffins being dragged off of playgrounds from the protection of Trump's ceasefire. And I do want to just throw out there that I and a lot of others have noticed that the U.S. ambassador to Kiev, in talking about strikes like this, have started to hold back in their language. After this strike, listen to what she posted. Horrified that tonight a ballistic missile struck near a playground in a restaurant in Kiev and Ri. More than 50 people injured and 16 killed, including 9 children. That number's now risen. This is why the war must end. A lot of people have noticed that in the last few months, even though she's a holdover from the Biden administration, her language has shifted, and she no longer says, you know, like, oh, the Russians did this, the Russians did that. She has taken out the culprit in her language about these attacks, which I think is being quiet about, I think, the most important part of who did it and why they did it. After this has been called out, I saw that she shifted a little bit back, but I just wanted to show you the difference between our ambassador to Kiev and the British ambassador to Kiev that was posted by Jimmy Rushton to show you just the difference. Again, read it one more time. Horrified to tonight a ballistic missile struck near a playground. More than 50 people injured and killed. This is why war must end. Now this is the British ambassador. While Ukraine pursues peace, Russia is striking civilians far from the front line. Today's ballistic missile attack on Kiev and Ri shows it has no intention to stop the war. My condolences to the families who lost their loved ones, 6 of them children. This cruelty must end now. Comes off a little differently, doesn't it? After this, we've seen a little bit of a shift. Like I said, here is her talking about a stop to a school in Kharkiv. My first stop in Kharkiv was visiting the students at an underground school stood up by the USG and partner support to UNHCR Ukraine to ensure Ukraine's children have access to safe in-person learning in the face of Russian attacks. See, this is the first time I've seen since Trump's been inaugurated where she's named the culprit. And this isn't even in the instance of an attack, just under the general idea of an attack happening, from the fact that they need to hide their schools in the first place because of these attacks.